Yes, cool. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Neighbourhoods and Regen. First up, any apologies? I've not had any, apart from Councillor Downer will be slightly late, but he said he'll get here as soon as he can. I'll read out the fire procedure. In case of emergency, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you do hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest escape route. The nearest route is via the stairs outside the doors. If you leave the council chamber or public gallery, exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in this event of an emergency, and please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by any member or staff. Cool. So we've got some minutes to sign off, and it's a little bit, not complicated, but we've got, because the last meeting was informal, we didn't formally sign off any minutes, so we've got two lots of minutes. Well, one lot of minutes to sign off, and then another to note. So we've got, which one are we doing first? July. Okay, so July minutes. They were circulated earlier via email. Hopefully everybody's seen them. Do we need proposers for that? Or, yeah, can I get a proposer? Councillor Quirk, seconder. John Medley, brilliant. And are we all happy with that? They're accurate? Yes, brilliant. Good time. Fantastic. And then we just need to note the minutes from the informal meeting, and everybody's happy with that. Fantastic. And so next, I'll invite members to declare any interests. Yes, Councillor Beston.
Declare a non-pecuniary interest in agenda item 6. My wife is director on Visit Isle of Wight Limited.
Thank you. And Councillor Medland.
Thank you, Chair. I'm, as the chairman of the planning committee and a member of the peer review steering group, I'm declaring an interest on items 8 and 10. Thank you.
Any others? No. Fantastic. Okay, public question time. I don't see any members, and we've not had any written questions. Okay, well, that's 15 minutes saved. Progress on outcomes and recommendations from previous meetings. Do we have anything? Councillor Quirk. Can you just use your microphone? Sorry, Chris.
So while they're still there, they date back to November 2021 and May 2022. Surely we should have a response to them by now.
Chairman, we can certainly chase up the housing strategy update. I don't know if Councillor Jordan can give us an update on local transport plan phase 4.
I can. It's in draft now and will be coming via various committees of this council during the spring. Looking forward to a full public consultation in the summer and for potential implementation from around the end of this year for 2024.
So can we ask to be updated as that progresses and put into the scrutiny committee at the tail end of it?
When there's a finalised draft plan, of course you'll be updated. This committee will, corporate scrutiny will, full council will, cabinet will. It's in draft mode at the moment. The reason it's in draft mode, quite apart from the enormous amount of work involved in pulling this plan together, is that we've been waiting on guidance from government to indicate some of the regulations that are needed to integrate into the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Anything else on progress and outcomes? No. Brilliant. Oh, sorry, Councillor
It was
Jones.
just, did you want to have an update on the committee's work plan about the City of Culture? Is that of interest?
Yes, by
Yeah,
all
just
means.
to
Yeah.
say that, so Southampton, as we know now, were unsuccessful. However, they were given, I think it's £125,000 from the government to continue the work. And there's I think in about 4 weeks' time, we've got a conference which many people from the Isle of Wight will be attending. So continuing those links, and so LEP are coming over to Ventnor Exchange at the end of this month to do a presentation regarding the cultural importance, sort of the economy on the island as well. So just to say that all that sort of kind of that work still being done, how it links in with our own strategies. Again, we will be doing that work after that. So just want to give you an update that isn't wasted. Is that okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. The cultural strategy, which was the instigator for the relationship with Southampton City of Culture, is still on schedule for consideration by Cabinet in the spring. So obviously we'll be, when we have a draft, we'll be seeking input from this committee.
Yeah, the consultation's going on as we speak. Actually, we've had the first round and they're doing the rest of it, the rest in the following part of the winter. So there's been, I think they've had about 120 people attend, I think about 8 or 9 different workshops so far for our strategy.
Chairman, thinking about, we've had about the spring, that your next meeting is May. So how does that fit in with that timescale?
Yeah, well, it's the same at the moment, so that causes us a problem, doesn't it, Paul?
Perhaps we need a discussion with the chairman as to how to approach that.
Thank you, though. Councillor Quirk.
If this is going to be considered in the spring and our next meeting is not until May, can we ask that it be referred to corporate scrutiny?
You can certainly make a request to Corporate Scrutiny Committee for them to consider it, Chairman.
We can. Well, I think that's what we're talking about. We need to discuss the detail about when we'll see that, but we can certainly do. Councillor Jones Evans, do you want to?
It's just, I'm not sure what the date of your next meeting is, or we can maybe, obviously in discussion, if they're available, with the director of the Island Collection, who's leading on the work, would they like to come maybe do some early findings and early soundings from all the work that they started in October with our conference that we held at a Hullabaloo.
Yeah, that's one of my suggestions was going to be that yes, we can absolutely refer to corporate scrutiny, but there's no reason we can't perhaps have an informal meeting before that anyway. So
that's a good option, Chairman. Yeah.
Brilliant. Anything else on that? Go on, Councillor.
It's just that it needs to be scrutinised before the event, and so if it's either we have an informal meeting and give informal feedback, or it goes to corporate scrutiny. But one way or the other, it needs to be considered.
Absolutely.
Sorry, it will be a cabinet decision, so it will become a policy of the Isle of Wight Council. It's hoped, or once it passes muster, obviously. So the usual trajectory or pathway would be that corporate scrutiny would see it and comment on it before it goes to cabinet that week.
Chairman, just to clarify, obviously Corporate Scrutiny Committee may wish to see it because we don't look at all the cabinet items on block, so we'd have to make sure that it's one of the things that the chairman is wanting to list on the agenda for his meeting.
Yeah, okay, we'll discuss that and come up with a plan. Anything else on that? No. Okay, so on to the bulk of the agenda. We've got Isle of Wight tourism, and we've got Visit Isle of Wight here, ready to give an update. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for your invite here this evening. It's always nice to come on our annual trip. We've done this now for 5 years, and it's always nice to share with you what we've been doing and what we're planning to do for the year ahead. So it's always nice to come and share that with you. I'm Will. I'm the managing director of Visit Isle of Wight, and Ian Griffiths is our chairman, who's with me this evening. And prior to, or just at the start of the event, as to the elected members, I circulated a marketing update document that you have. I'll take you through that a little bit. I'm not going to go into massive amounts of detail in relation to that, but basically let me set the scene for tourism 2022 and 2023, and then we can take that forward from there. So in 2022, we saw quite a positive impact from visitors coming to the island. We saw them, the research that we do had been stopped due to the COVID impact on that, and that just started again back in March of 2022. So the first quarter's research showed that on the same period, like for like numbers, when I say like for like on the period, which was April, May and June, that period is like for like for against 2019, which was the last full period of research that was there. 2021 and the 2020 and 2021 was quite a difficult year to actually gain all that research around. So in Q2, it showed an increase of 2% on visitor numbers to the island, but alongside that, it actually showed that the total visitor spend during that period was quite high and had gone up by 45%, and that 45% took it up to £114 million during that period of 3 months, which was a positive impact within there. We're still waiting on some tweaks to our Q3 and Q4 stats. So as soon as we get that, happy to share that with this panel so that you can actually have a look at that. But all in all, and with the feedback from the various organisations that we talked to, 2022 was a positive year for tourism on the island. Looking into 2023, the most recent piece of Visit Britain research, which is the consumer sentiment tracker, which has been running for 53 weeks since the start of the actual COVID pandemic, actually shows, which was done on the 7th of December, and this a piece of research which you don't have in your pack there, which is actually 43 pages long. So I thought I'd print one off rather than and save a few trees and things like that. So at the moment, what that's actually showing is that the overnight domestic trip intentions which is anticipated in December 2021, that 19% of the people interviewed, which is a huge amount, actually went and said that they are now planned to travel during January to March of 2023. That's actually an increase in the previous year, which was 15%. So that's an increase of 4% for that. For the April to June period, the percentage was 35%, based on against 25%, so a 10% increase of people looking for that domestic trip. And in July to September, it went up from 36% to 43%. So whilst I feel quite strongly that 2023 will be a tough year and a challenging year for tourism, the actual research from Visit Britain and Visit England is actually quite positive and buoyant within there. And recent research that just came out over the past week shows that inbound tourism forecast, so everything that's not inbound to the Isle of Wight, that's inbound to the UK, is actually beginning to come back, and it's anticipated for 2023 to be 35.1 million visits in 2023. And that's the last full year of that was 2019, which was 40.9 million. So that's 86% of the previous thing, if my maths are correct. So again, it's coming back, and that would take us back to probably 2014 stats within there. So again, inbound tourism to the UK, of which we get around about 6%, is relatively buoyant and looks to be buoyant. Equally, we still have the issues around the markets coming from China, which will have a huge impact on this, but will bring their own issues with that perhaps. But we have to wait and see how that pans out. So looking back at 2022, what did we do? So if you look at your pack there, if you actually look at some of the autumn marketing, we created a new marketing campaign called Say Yes to the Isle of Wight. So say yes to autumn adventures, say yes to welcome distractions, say yes to wild weekends. And it was very, very positive and very, very grabbed by the industry and wanting to be taken forward by them. You know, even now they're showing this Say Yes campaign in their own marketing activity that they're doing. So the autumn campaign was certainly going ahead, and what we're seeing is that the first page of that is showing you some of the ads, and then the second page is actually showing you some of the run of network ads and retargeting of that. Now, in August through till September, the run of network advertising that we do, we buy on bulk across the various sites, and that we had actually 68.5 million impressions. That's an impression is every single time your ad is seen on the various different channels when people are searching for various things. And that led to 84,635 clicks back to our website, which is actually a positive, again, positive number that's coming back within there. We're looking at how we review that and get better figures for there. It's a positive figure. Let's look at how we can do things better. We're always evolving and changing things around going forward into there. So looking at autumn, the autumn retargeting is certainly something that's there. And if you turn over again, you can actually see the activity on this document here on the sheet as to what we're actually dealing with. So Ramblers Online editorial, Coast magazines, you know, BBC Country File, Guardian travel sections within there. So a lot of the major publications that we want to be seen in to actually promote the island. Into October, again, into the Guardian travel section and into a British Travel Journal and the Autumn Walking Festival that took place during that period. Touching on the Walking Festival used to be run by Isle of Wight Council, but in the time that I've been here and prior to that, the Walking Festival was taken over and run by Visit Isle of Wight. And we operate 2 walking festivals throughout the year. So in 2022, we had the walking festival in May and also one in October. And that was 18 days of specific walks. If you join the 2 together, there was 143 walks, and there was 1,256 islanders actually went on that on these various walks during that period of time. And there was 888 off island people came to the island, stayed over, and took all these walks. We've taken our research, we've extrapolated it out into relation to the overnight stays, and we estimate that the economic impact onto the island from that is £282,000 from that specific, these 2 walking festivals that are there, which again, I think is an absolute great result, and we want to try and develop that more. I'll come on to Walking Festival into 2023. They're already in place, and they'll take place on the 13th to the 21st of May this year, and also the 7th to the 15th of October. Moving on into winter, obviously winter is a shoulder, if not low season, or perceived low season with us. So we have to be a lot more interesting as to how we get our messaging out there. And as you can see, some of the stuff there, Say Yes to Winter Adventures, Winter Wonderland, food, drinks, cozy toes, frosty noses, all of these things that we want people to actually arrive for the day or for that long weekend to come and stay with us. And as you can see, the run of network retargeting, plus it's booking now for 2023. And it's coming to this island adventure that we're looking to actually develop into 2023. What else are we doing during that period of time? We are, for 2023, for the start of 2020, for the start of the season, we are developing and creating an accessibility guide, and that accessibility guide will be something that we produce alongside Isle Access, who are working with us to actually develop that to target the UK accessibility travel market, which is its value is £15 billion. For that accessibility travel market. So therefore, we'll be producing this guide. We're doing it at the moment, and we're talking to businesses at the moment and trying to get more businesses to get involved. So we'll get that and then carry that on, and that will be our main thrust going forward for that accessibility market. The purple pound is the phrase that everyone allocates along to that, and I believe there's other elements of accessibility will come into discussions after we're finished. So that accessibility market. In addition to that, we'll work alongside the sunflower organisation. So we'll have the Isle of Wight being a sunflower island, and that sunflower recognition relates to hidden disabilities, so that not every disability is a visual and seen one. And this is for that. So we will be working and creating various different training programs for front of house staff and for bus drivers, taxi drivers, train drivers, the whole thing around that sort of period. In addition to that, during Jan, Feb and March of this year, we'll be promoting and delivering tourism ambassador training programs. That's for that smiling face when you arrive off the ferry or when you arrive in at the train station or at your front of house or get the bus or whatever. And these will be for frontline tourism staff, so front of house staff, let's say taxi drivers, for lots of different people who perhaps don't perceive themselves to be frontline for the tourism industry. And in addition to that, that will also include awareness sessions around about the UNESCO biosphere status that we have, and we're delivering that, and we're working alongside the AONB to actually deliver that as part of a wider biosphere programme. Again, prior to Easter, we're working on a project to increase the visibility and the branding and the training of all of the tourist information points across the island, because they're mostly living and breathing within commercial businesses. For example, there's one at Newport bus station, but there's also one at Vernon Cottage in Shanklin, and so we'll be working together to have everything that's actually developed, and so that the people know exactly where to go. And that project's running just at the moment. You probably remember we've done quite a lot of press and PR over the period, and there is an element that people would discuss around about the value of press and PR. How we use this, we use an advertising value equivalent model to deal with that, and that comes to us from our agency, who actually checks all of our activities that we're doing. And at the moment, the 2022 figure is the advertising equivalent of press and PR was £22 million that we got, and that was in publications such as Telegraph, Sun, Independent, the Times, various online elements along that side of that as well. And you'll also see that, or if you do watch More 4 and Channel 4, you'll probably remember Ainsley Harriott and Grace Dent coming to the island and being part of the Best of British by the Sea. And that was a project that Visit Isle of Wight brought them here to the island to actually do the filming and carry on with that. So very, very positive. On the downside, I can only say that I was disappointed, but I can understand why Tour of Britain didn't arrive here. But all I can say from that is that we have had legacy elements, even though it didn't come here. We have had legacy elements that have come to here. So tour operators are actually putting the Isle of Wight on their list to actually come here and be part of the cycling product. We have influencers who are actually developing products to actually bring people back to the island, and so it's not all bad news in relation to that. We're seen as being in that cycling market. As a direct result of that, we'll be exhibiting for the first time at the cycle show at the NEC in Birmingham to take that forward and to ensure that we're actually going to be getting that message out there. Moving into the so you've seen the winter period there. Winter 2023 and the book for 2023, sorry, autumn 2022 moving into 2023, we started a very much a huge project around a TV ad through Sky AdSmart. And you'll see in your pack there, you'll see the actual map that actually shows the area that we're covering for Sky AdSmart. And what that does is Sky AdSmart is a digital platform that that people can actually look and see the various different ads that are targeted to them. So sometimes people don't understand Sky AdSmart, but I put it down as if we all lived in one building, we could all be watching the same program at the same time, but each and every one of us would be getting served different TV ads because of the different sort of age groups and likes and dislikes and all these different things. So that's quite it's a highly intelligent piece of digital activity that we do. I don't have the TV ad today, but I'm sure you've all seen it, and I'm sure you've all still got the earworm of DJ Boulevard and Points of View going in your ears at the time as the 30-second ad was going on, and that actually is going out to and has 900,000 impressions and runs into so will be seen 900,000 times across that period, across this specific area. From that started on Boxing Day and runs through into the 22nd of January. Linked inside with that, you'll, if you turn your page over, you'll actually see a targeted mail drop campaign that's running. So we looked at different specific areas to actually complement what we were doing with Sky AdSmart. So this is a piece that comes through the door, and this is targeting on one side. So this is, you're actually seeing both sides of the piece of print. On one side, it's targeting certainly family groups, and on the other side, you're looking at that active senior role within there as well. And we worked alongside our 3 ferry operators and also with Parkdean Resorts to offer various different travel options, and that will be distributed out to 120,000 households. During this period as well, we're also running various different marketing campaigns, and we're also running a competition. And that competition, put the things down earlier on, that competition has been seen 11,500 times, and it has 6,000 entries sitting waiting for people to actually win a trip to the Isle of Wight during 2023. And that's a full package, full family package of people coming to the island. So again, highly positive in what we're doing. As I sit here today, there's a bid that has gone into central government to actually get some money from a fund which is working alongside some other southern DMOs and alongside a large ferry company, an inbound ferry company, but it's not been 100% finalised as yet, so I'm not going to go into massive detail about it. But there is a campaign that will end up and will be looking to target the French market. We're literally just waiting on the announcement from Visit Britain, probably over the next couple of days that's actually taking place. But Visit Isle of Wight is central to that, alongside Visit Plymouth, as to how we're bringing people onto the island. In addition to that, we will work with the Mermaid Atlantic Challenge. The Mermaid team are going to be doing the Talisker Atlantic rowing race, and we'll be looking to create various pieces of content alongside them and moving them into, so that because they've been doing all the training around the island and looking at all these various different locations there. So we're working quite closely with them, and even that's starting now, and that'll move all the way through 2023 and into the fact of the race that takes place. I think they leave on Boxing Day as well from Tenerife or somewhere like that. But we'll be following them, and that's a massive piece of work that we should be doing and promoting that. So again, spring, it's all about families, about coming here, two-wheeled adventures, saying yes to spectacular scenery. And we're also going to be working on, and we've got in place, a greatest hits radio campaign for people to actually to come win a trip to come to the Isle of Wight, but also to plus a hamper of digital detox goodies. Quite sure what that is. Someone in the team will tell me that. But digital detox goodies, and that will be identifying that over the Bath, Bristol, London, and Birmingham, Coventry areas, and that will give a huge. So it's over 5 greatest hits radio areas that's there. So a really popular campaign, and it will bring us lots of coverage and the data that comes alongside that, so that we can retarget and deliver that as well. So final piece on your page there, you can see us going into February and March and April. We have a 12-month project running with Sainsbury's magazine and online, and they have an MPU advert that will live and breathe with us on their website. We have the Spring Walking Festival campaign. We're looking at some other digital audio stuff with Bauer Media, and there's also elements that we're looking into the Silver Surfer market. Just moving on to something completely different, and I'll be very quick because I know that I'm probably against time. Our team, we have during COVID, our team was contracted slightly, and part of the element there was the actual exhibitions that we actually attend to. We have an exhibitions partnership on the island. That's now re-energised. So our team will be attending and looking at various different exhibitions over the next 6 to 7 months, starting next week, where we have a team who will be at the Vacantiebeurs exhibition in Utrecht in Holland, promoting the island alongside our colleagues from Portsmouth, so working together to bring people here. We'll have an excursions exhibition in January, the camping, caravan and motorhome show in February at the NEC, a virtual Explore GB in February and March. We'll be at the National Outdoor Expo in March, the British Tourism and Travel Show in March, the Cycle Show in April, and the New Forest Show in July. So a pretty packed, stand in front of people and tell them why they should be coming to the Isle of Wight. So all in all, that's a snapshot, believe it or not, of what we do. But happy to take any questions from you.
Councillor Ward and then Councillor Medland.
Will, thank you for that presentation. Something you said intrigued me, but before I go into that, I just want to say I think this is tremendous. When I saw this on TV, I thought to myself, it looked like an advert for a Mediterranean island. And I thought, I'd like to go there. Yeah, actually, first class. Yeah. Yeah, what intrigued me was the Chinese market. How do you target them, or how do you infiltrate the Chinese market?
The Chinese market is quite.
I'm not talking about the Hong Kong Express. Yeah.
It's a market that we would work through with Visit Britain. They have people who are on site there, and we would work to look at and identify that. There are other markets. Obviously, we look and target elements into that near continent. So the Benelux regions in northern France, who would be easier to target, but we still have to look further afield. So we will be developing and moving into that Chinese market. We're doing that through Visit Britain and looking at how we can do that with various tour operators as well.
Oh, I see.
So targeting various tour operators. And that the exhibition I mentioned, which is Explore GB, that is one where we go face to face and have, it's like speed dating. And we have 15 minutes. Well, tour operator speed dating, where we have 15 minutes and we sell the island to the tour operators, and we can target the tour operators we want to see, and we actually have online meetings. And the team work, because of the time difference, the team are working during the night as well, because that's daytime for the Far East. So they're working there, and then we have another team working during the day for that near continent.
It just surprises me, and well done, that you get people who've come from the other side of the world. I take it, they want to see Big Ben and Buckingham Palace and places like that. But how do you get them to the Isle of Wight? That's what intrigues me.
If I can add to Will's comments, also don't forget Chinese students.
Of course.
If you look at something like Portsmouth University, probably 10% students of Chinese origin. So there's certain hoteliers in Sandown Bay area that's a big market for them as well.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Just going back to the fact that you want to go there, which is really nice to hear. One thing I would say is the TV ad is there to challenge perceptions. Yeah. There is a perception, or there can be some perceptions of the Isle of Wight. It's there to challenge perception, to show that this is a cool place. This is a great place to visit, and people should come and visit us. It's not stuck in the 1950s, as some people would have us believe. We are, go get them, and come to the Isle of Wight. You'll have a great time.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you. Councillor Medland.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Myers, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. It's really fantastic to hear such a lot of good news, considering the incredibly difficult period you have been talking about. It's been an extraordinarily challenging time. I'm really pleased, particularly look at seeing the visitor spend increase. That's really important, and the number of people staying over. Those two things are connected, aren't they? The more people stay, the more they spend. So that's really good news. I was just wanting to ask you about what we used to have was the local sustainable transport fund. We used to that you took over from the Isle of Wight Council, didn't you? And it was to promote the cycling and walking in particular. I assume that funding is now ended, but are you able to continue that campaign?
Thanks for bringing that up. The simple answer is yes. Yes, the funding has finished. That was access funding from DFT. So that has been completed. But when we went forward with our bid elements and going through the bid process, we put in there about accessibility and sustainability. And within there, we said that we would increase that element of the bus pass scheme that we used to work with the various accommodation providers, plus increasing that walking and cycling. And the person who we've employed to look after exhibitions, her role also moves into sustainability and sustainable travel. And she's working really hard to reinvigorate that. It's not taking her side part in, but it's certainly she's certainly working hard to increase that. So yes, it will come back.
Thank you. Councillor Beston.
Chairman. Will, so you mentioned AdSmart, and just twofold. I mean, as regards to social media, it's probably quite easy to measure your reach, to get direct figures on that. What are you looking to get out of AdSmart reach? I mean, we're looking at the south and southwest. Do you envisage we may get back from that?
It's an interesting one because obviously we want to get a good return on that investment. You know, if anything, we're looking at least a 6-to-1 investment if we can actually get that. And we would actually target that. We're waiting. I was hoping to have something for today because the campaign's in full flow, and I was hoping to get an update as to where exactly it was, the number of impressions, the number of click-throughs, the number of all these different things. I don't have that, unfortunately, because the campaign's in full tilt. We're looking to increase the number of click-throughs to our website. We're looking to increase that brand awareness, and we're looking, I would say, to get at least a 6-to-1 return on that investment that we've put into that.
And just to wrap us up, to follow on from that, because I was also interested with the advertisements. How do you determine what area you're going to cover with the adverts? Is it that traditionally we would get more visitors from that area, or is it just literally because it's our nearest neighbours, basically?
If only it were that simple. Yeah, we sit down with our travel partners because if you'll notice, the Sky AdSmart doesn't go into Hampshire and the South Coast. And we've specifically not put it there because of the additional marketing that Wight and Red Funnel and Hover Travel are actually dealing with along there. So we're going further out to increase that the element that's in there. And we also look and we work quite closely with them through our strategic marketing panel, and we sit down and we look at where we want to be dealing with, where we want to target things. You know, realistically, you know, that M62 corridor, if we were to go further north, that M62 corridor from Manchester across to Hull has, you know, probably, I think the population in there is about 12 to 14 million. You know, if we're to take further north, you're looking at a 5-hour drive time, and you look at drive time, you look at ease of access, you look at motorway access, you look at all these different things, and you target in that way. But equally, you also look at our website and see where the people are coming from. So prior to Christmas, our marketing manager came to me and says, we're going to be putting some social media advertisement in Plymouth. And I questioned her, why Plymouth? Well, that's where people are coming from. That's where people are actually identifying where we're actually coming from our website, and we're seeing more clicks and links coming from that Plymouth area. And we link that back to regional press that we've done in that area, and we've had people in journals onto the island, and we can see the various double-page spreads that we've had in that the local newspapers. It's increasing that awareness for people who get there. So you fish where the fish are, realistically.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll move us now on to the sustainable and accessible tourism campaign, because I'm aware we've got a pretty stacked agenda today. But thank you very much for that. Yeah, you're welcome to. You can stay if you like, but I won't be offended if you leave.
Will, could I have a copy of your programme and the places you're going to go? Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah, we are moving on to 6B. Correct? Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Chris.
Obviously, seeing the agenda and obviously seeking an update for the committee on the broader accessible island agenda. As Will touched on earlier on in his presentation, the opportunity provided by the Purple Pound and the importance of the sector, the tourism sector on the island's economy. I means this is a regeneration issue. And in that context, we've obviously sought to really up our game on reaching out to that particular sector. There's clear recognition that it's currently underserved. The population analysis we've done indicates there's a massive market out there in terms of the potential spend, not just in the general population, but specifically in the disabled and accessible population, both on the island and off it. So once we identified that, we did a short research project in the summer to identify and scope what that scope of opportunity might be. And as part of doing that, it was quite an interesting piece of work, really focusing, as I said, on the tourism sector in the first instance. What we started to identify was the number of good practice opportunities that exist and players in the market in the accessible employment sector, and the fact that on the island there is a labour force issue and an untapped labour market potentially of those with disabilities, and are currently not well served by programmes such as Department of Work and Pensions, for example. So interesting that would emerge from that piece of research, and clearly, given the committee, I'm sure will be aware from press coverage, the challenges we face as an island economy in terms of skills and labour force. Ignoring that sector as an opportunity would be reckless, to say the least. So the research project has actually signposted us to those two key areas of having a broader awareness amongst the business community across the piece on the island of what it takes to help and employ a person with disabilities and remove some of the barriers and the stigma connected with that, and also the support mechanisms that exist both nationally and locally for reaching out to that particular labour market. So to translate that then into a specific responsibility by the council to promote this as part of the regeneration agenda, to encourage more recruitment of disabled people is very much seen as a priority going forward. So to that end, the research report was timely in that it helped inform our bid to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. That was confirmed pre-Christmas of just over 1.2 million over 3 years. And within that programme of activity, we're focusing on identifying a capacity and coordinating capacity for the council on behalf of the business and the tourism sector to promote employment of disabled people and to promote the island as a good place to visit in terms of accessibility. So obviously I can provide a lot more detail in a separate report, giving the results of the research report, how we're going to go about bringing that forward and implementing the recommendations of that. But really this was just a brief update on the back of Will's presentation as to the importance of that sector, not only in terms of the tourism sector, but to the broader economic situation of the Isle of Wight.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions on that specific section? I am aware that we, in this committee, we do get a lot of surveys and reports, so I'm hoping to utilise a lot of informal meetings going forward this year, just so we can get, as well as a broader overview, we can get into the detail of it. So if you've not got any questions now, that's fine. We can get into it a bit. Go on, Councillor Ward. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, I do find it interesting and agree actually with what Chris says, because from a local level, we are constantly told, oh, there's not enough drop curbs and there's not enough this and there's not enough that. But to actually have a campaign, if I can call it that, to promote disabled access and what have you, I think it's a really good idea. Really good idea. Yeah.
Agree, Councillor Jones-Evans?
Thank you for those comments, Ian. I think we're all going in the right direction. I seem to remember when Will first became managing director of Visit Isle of Wight, they did their conference. That was, he had the sort of the guru from, who deals in accessible tourism from the UK come and speak and just showed what a valuable sector it was, not only to enrich people's lives that come to these places, but because they often bring one person who may have an accessibility issue will often bring 2, 3, 4 people with them. So it's actually, it's the benefits are huge. Just to touch again quickly on the employment thing that came out of it, there's actually a half-day conference in February at Lizard hosting, and that's already sold out before Christmas. So really great news that there's employers all around the island that will be coming to that already to see how they can interact and better serve this latent workforce. To say would be reckless and foolish and to not to recognise this and do all we can, because you know a lot of people find a lot of value through working, don't they, as well? So
Brilliant. Anything else? No. Thank you for that. We'll move on now to the floating bridge. Is this?
One laugh when we mentioned floating.
Yeah.
Special club, Ian.
Councillor Jordan, I assume this is you.
Well, sorry, you've caught me on the hop there, Chair. As it was to receive an overview of the comments, which I thought was the written a report that you've got. I can't add much to it. Happy to take any questions, but just to say that a couple of comments that obviously you'll see that we survey. Unfortunately, we're struggling to get a user group, but we just have a user group for the floating bridge. COVID saw that off as a user group, and it's been difficult to, and people have looked, it's interest, we'll smile, but we can't get any interest in the users to come along and tell us how good or bad it is. But they did manage to do that in the online survey, which we ran last summer from July to September. So about 5,000, that was encouraging. Now I thought quite a lot, 5,127 people replied in the survey. And we surveyed 5,127 and 1,188 responded, about a quarter of them. I think it's probably pretty good for a survey, that. If you take in average or better and average or worse, it was split about half and half between those that thought it was an average or better than average service, and about half of the 1,188 thought it was average or below average. So I know the average is in both camps, but it's about half and half. I do wonder if they were using the same floating bridge, because it seems odd that half the people were probably travelling with the other half that thought it was a good service who didn't, and vice versa. So I can't work that one out. But anyway, a couple of things. Since the MCA inspection, and bear in mind this a survey was from July, so I don't have the data on how many people responded at the beginning, so in the middle of the summer rather than towards the end in September. But back last spring, we had the MCA inspection, which is the 5-year inspection of floating bridge. And since it returned, I can't remember the exact date, but it was spring of last year. So we're coming towards 9 months to a year of service. Since that day, it's been running at 97% of scheduled hours. 97% of scheduled hours. You may be forgiven for thinking from the narrative in some quarters that it never runs. It's not the case. It runs 97% of scheduled hours time. And just to add to that, then finally, Chair, that scheduled hours time is about 4,500 hours, 18 hours a day over a period of 9 months, roughly. So about 6,500 hours a year. That's the scheduled hours on average. So since the MSA inspection, we've lost about 120 hours of unplanned service. So that's when the floating bridge was not running for reasons that we didn't plan for. About 120 hours. And some of those, I don't know the percentage, but some of those were staff sickness. So we suffered the same problems as the ferries, where we could not cover because of the COVID and COVID type illnesses that were going around. We could not cover safely the operation. And so on a couple of occasions for small hours or half days, the floating bridge wasn't working to constitute about that 120 hours. So that's about it, really. That's all I can say. One of the improvements we have made is that we have managed to source a number of spare parts for floating bridge more recently, and that has helped on any downtime. So some of the downtime is actually could have been far worse than we've seen when we've had a couple of minor, minor's my word, a couple of mechanical breakdowns, particularly the pins that hold the ramps, which are inspected, but they're not visible. You have to actually scramble around to inspect them, but we have them, we put them in stock, and so we're getting downtimes of 2 and 4 hours for repairs on that. But small repairs anyway, about 3% of the total operating time. I've not much more to add than that, Chair and Committee, and happy to take any questions over and above that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Beston first, and then we'll go to Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Phil, for that. You've already mentioned the Saver Card user group. Unfortunate, COVID got in the way of that. Really is unfortunate. Just reading on some of the stats, and I think you've previously gone over that quickly. I think there's still an opportunity to use that user group, if you like. I know that you've got 270 of user group card holders that said they would be prepared to enter into a user group, 25% actually of the 270, which isn't a great deal. I think that's certainly worth pursuing. I do have some comments or questions as regards to the survey itself. And it's the action plan. And actually it's the first one. It's the review loading, unloading procedures as well as staff responsibilities. Now, one of the objectives in there is to try and decrease the crossing time of the FB6. Is that possible? I think the crossing is around about 4 to 5 minutes, and of course, either side of that, you have the loading and unloading time. Is it realistic? Is that a realistic objective? Are you really likely to save a great amount on crossing time? And will that really impact on the user experience?
That's a good question. Good question. And the answer is yes, it's realistic to try and improve the speed. Some of the original speed after the MCA inspection and some of the repairs did reduce the speed of the crossings. We were worried. We didn't want another motor going, so we reduced the crossing speed. We have increased slightly. It is realistic to expect at certain times a quicker crossing. And of course, it depends to a certain extent. We're talking about maybe halves of minutes, but you know, if you've got 2 or 3 vehicles on the floating bridge, it's quicker to turn it round than if there are 8 or 10 or, you know, and foot passengers affect that because the foot passengers come before and after vehicles and so on. But so the answer is, sorry, I'm going around a certain bit, but the answer is we can improve the times a little bit, and we think that could improve the service. Just one caveat. The chain depth is still a problem with the floating bridge, and we have to be mindful of that in terms of it pulling up in the water at certain times on high tides, which is why we have the little push boat, nicely camouflaged little push boat we've got now. You can't see it very well. It's great, but there we are. That's part of the process as well.
Councillor Quirk.
Thanks, Phil. This is the silver card holders. What proportion of journeys are by silver card holders? Are we getting a representative issue here? Because one of the things that kept cropping up over the last 4 years before the current 2 years was getting kids across schools for education, things like that. And it's only coming out at 2%. Is there a different way of, do they have passes that are issued differently, or are they all paying their money or getting across free, or what?
I don't know what the question was there, Chris. Sorry.
Basically, education was a big issue, according to the people in Cowes and East Cowes, getting kids across. It's only 2% of the journeys, according to this. So is there a different way? Do they have passes like a bus pass that aren't being counted? Because maybe that would be an important bit to include next time you do it.
Yeah, the travel's different for school travel. It's free.
Okay, but it might be an important bit of the journey or missing an important part of the cascade on tail if you don't pick up that in your analysis. They're using every day, but they appear not to be.
Oh, well, there are, when we say children, are you talking about what? Under 16, under 21, under 25? It's a small amount, but that's the survey. I mean, is it partly to do with the survey you're talking about, Chris? Yeah. I mean, you tell me. I don't know why. Maybe we should have had a little app on the phone or something to pick up under 16.
It's just a thought.
Expecting them to go on the World Wide Web.
If we're going to use this as for making decisions, then it's important that you've got the full data. And it was a big issue raised about getting children across for schooling in both directions over the last few years. And if we're not picking them up because they're picked up differently by a free pass or whatever, then maybe we need to somehow try and factor them in.
I guess my colleague for education's not here, but we know roughly the numbers that need to travel across to go to Cowes Enterprise College from East Cowes and back of an evening. I don't know what those numbers are, but we know what they are roughly. Notwithstanding that some children might not go to school for reasons, but we know roughly what. So whether it's a big concern or a concern, but we get them across. If the floating bridge doesn't work, we put on the Jenny boat. But there is an issue if we don't get them across about providing school to transport from East Cowes round through Newport to Cowes College. So again,
I'll bring Councillor Jones Evans in. I think what Councillor Quirk is just getting at is that obviously we're not hearing from those people in this survey is the point, right? Councillor Jones Evans.
I was going to suggest that. I think it's like cross purposes. I think what you're asking Councillor Quirk is, could we maybe do an on-board survey with this particular group because they haven't got a saver cards, therefore we're not asking them these questions directly. We're not hearing from them. And if the user group's not up and running, again, their voice isn't being heard. So I guess what you're getting at was it.
Yeah, basically you've got a set of data. When you present people with data, they tend to make decisions on it. And this data misses out possibly quite a large user group of the ferry. Now, as long as there's nothing in the sort of the postscript, the narrative that says, and we know that there are 300 children a day that go both ways across the thing, and so it's not in there. And so if someone said, well, actually, it's nearly all leisure, they could drive round, but let's do away with the floating bridge. And then suddenly you've got 300 children who can't get to school. And it costs a fortune in transport. So it's that was my point. That was the scrutiny point.
Well, part of the funding arrangement with the SLEP to provide the floating bridge was to prevent people driving round, to reduce carbon emissions. It was part of the funding. That's part of the reason why it's vital to keep the crossing going, quite apart from the economic value for both communities. And the children are just part of that issue of getting people across the river without going round on bus or in the car or, heaven forbid, cycle.
I'll move us on. Councillor Best, then I've got a couple of questions myself.
Chair, part of the website, part of the survey and the objective and actions was to review the website. I mean, I don't particularly have a problem with this website. There's just a couple of things on there. And on the positive, I mean, prices are clearly set out. To register your saver card seems relatively easy, and even to purchase tickets. On the downside, when you click on a timetable, again, how could you give a timetable for the floating bridge? There isn't one. There's a start and finish time. It may be worth perhaps rewording that title. I don't know. The other point that I was going to make was the webcam, live cam. It isn't a live cam. It's always 10 minutes behind. Before I just get onto that, I mean, there's an action for a mobile app. Absolutely, yes. For a mobile smartphone user myself that relies on apps to purchase online, etc. We know how that works. For tourism, for tourists, that is must, as far as I'm concerned, to develop that app. Yes, the website is always there should you need it. That app is really, really important. That's my view on that. And the webcam is always 10 minutes behind. If we're going to try and offer we are offering a service, but if the user perceives and looks at that webcam, either on the website or on a mobile app, they may want to plan their journey to match with that, and they won't be able to. It's 10 minutes adrift. So that's just an observation there.
Thank you, Councillor Beston. Just a question or a couple of questions from myself, Councillor Jordan. It's just going on to something you mentioned about one of the purposes of the floating bridge was to try and reduce that car journey around the island. And I'm very aware, based on what Councillor Quirk said, this is a snapshot of a demographic. This isn't a full picture, but I just found it interesting that the amount of car journeys that we're talking about here in terms of the answered in the survey, but actually the reasons for using it are, in my mind, before I looked at this, I assumed that most of it would be commuting, but actually leisure and shopping is a huge proportion of that. And I can't quite square in my head why people do, for leisure and shopping being the primary reason, why that many people are still using the car to do that. Because, yeah. Do we have any insight?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? The majority were over 45, wasn't it, of users over 45 years of age, and the time was between 11 and 5:30. I'm assuming there's a surge at 5 o'clock and 5:30, but I don't know that. So I agree. It's an interesting statistic.
And again, just my last point to wrap us up on that, I think, was I guess more of an observation, but it's interesting we talk about perception of the floating bridge and the reality, because with some of the answers here, you've got the service. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find the page it was on now, but the service in general that you're receiving and the perception there is quite poor and below average from respondents, but actually when they talk about the service received on board, a lot of it is average or above that, and you're talking about it's running 97 or over 97% of the scheduled time. So it's what is that? What is it? Is it a perception or is it?
I think, Chair, it's reputation. I think there's historical failures of the service for sure, and that has figured in people's minds generally, in our public, in our residents generally, and in responses to surveys, that it's seen as a poor service. And the reality is, of the last year, it's not a poor service. This council should be proud of that service in the last year. I accept there have been problems with it. Ian knows as well as anyone the problems with that vessel and that service, but it has improved.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Ward, one last point.
The reputation of the floating bridge has always been incorrect. What Phil has just said, about 97%, okay, during our time, it was about 93, 95% most of the time. But that's not what the media said. You know, if it went out for half an hour, it's headlines. Don't tell you it's come back in again in half an hour and sorted. It was always reliable. In fact, generally, more reliable than the cross-Solent ferries.
We'll end on that point then. Thank you, Councillor Ward. Just a point, Councillor Jordan, it'd be good to, these surveys, it'd be good to see them back annually, if that's okay, just so we can see
Sure,
how we're progressing.
I'll pass that on and we'll undertake to provide you with that.
Thank you, brilliant. Okay, on to place and neighbourhood planning. I'm assuming Paul, would you like to introduce this, and Ollie?
Well, Chair, it's okay. It's a bit of a planning
Joint
sandwich in
effort.
the middle of this meeting, actually.
Yeah.
I have to take responsibility for the top slice of the sandwich, which is around the request from the committee around an understanding of the difference between neighbourhood and place planning. And obviously, Ollie, my colleague, is a qualified planner, is much more in tune with that issue in terms of the statutory nature of those functions and particularly the neighbourhood planning. But the reason I've written this report and provided answer to the committee's inquiry is that we developed the approach to place planning here on the island, which is quite different and seeks to achieve a different kind of objective. As the report references, it's more about a process of engagement and joint response to wider actions that affect the well-being of a community, not specifically just about the development of new housing or development control within a particular local area, which unfortunately has become a focus for the neighbourhood plan instrument. So the report, honestly and frankly, I hope, describes the differences between the two. There's no preference set out in it as a recommendation for the committee to endorse. But what it hopefully, as I say, usefully describes is how they're being deployed at the moment in different parts of the island. And obviously members will be familiar, some more than others, regarding the different geographies involved. And very much how this process is moving forward as part of our regeneration agenda on the island. The last point really the report emphasises, and I don't think it highlights enough, is I mentioned the Shared Prosperity Fund earlier, and that is providing us again with additional capacity in the regen team to really accelerate the implementation of the place plan approach and to provide local regeneration capacity to achieve those local ambitions that will come out of place plans. So I think we've done well in the short term with the resources we've had, but the addition of 2 further officers in the team to specifically work on place planning in different parts of the island, we'll see this become much more of a key feature. Why is that so important? Because as well as being a matter for the sustainable regeneration of those areas, what those communities want and aspire to is a better relationship with the council overall and its service provision and the relationships between town and parish councils and the Isle of Wight councils becoming much more of a partnership. These are really key objectives that are set out in the administration's corporate plan and the place planning approach from our perspective will be a major contributor to success on that front. So I'll obviously take any comments and reflections from the committee on the content of the report. And obviously it's really a factual report around where we are at on both of those issues. Ollie may want to add something on the neighbourhood planning process and whether there's any more candidates that are coming forward on that agenda. But other than that, obviously happy to take any questions.
I think we'll carry on through. If Ollie wants to add to that, then we'll take questions if that's okay. No. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Quirk.
I have several. Should I take them one at a time? On page 93, it says published notes of the developer forum, assumed to be the Shlar panel. In my day, the developer forum wasn't the Shlar panel, so is that what's happening here?
Paper, Councillor Quirk.
Okay.
That's the
Page 93.
We're on.
Big pack. Page 92 of the big pack.
Yeah, we're not that far ahead yet, Councillor Quirk.
that's agenda 10.
I thought that was all under the same heading.
We're pages 43 to 48. It's the
Okay, so I thought we were all under the same heading. So okay, we're going to come as long as we're coming on to that bit. That's fine.
We will eventually.
I thought it was all of the same item on the agenda.
No, we've got place and planning first, and then it's the development of the new records office, and then we're on to planning, which I think is.
But that's not about the records office.
Page 3, planning is agenda item 10, Councillor Quirk.
As long as we come back to this document, that's the,
We will do. It's on the agenda, Councillor Quick. We will come there. Don't worry. As long as we don't take too much time. Any questions on the place and neighbourhood planning that was just spoken about then? I guess my only question, Chris, is can this? I assume that the aim is that, well, all local councils on the Isle of Wight will have a place or neighbourhood plan at some point.
It's a worthy aspiration.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to the grassroots view of that,
yeah,
as to whether they see value in that.
Yeah.
But we stand ready as a team to work with any community that seeks to want to engage in that way and use whichever instrument they feel appropriate. But as I say, the pros and cons of each are set out in the report. Sorry, Chair, I was forgetting you were part of the steering group for the place plan in Newport, weren't you? So my apologies.
No, that's brilliant. Because all I was thinking was how are we getting this message out there at the moment, and it's IWAC a route to, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on that point, I think there's a couple of things that have been done to date. One is to try and recognise these different types of plans, different routes to community engagement and involvement in these different types of plan making, and how that reflects then in ultimately planning decisions, and that's coming through in the emerging island planning strategy and a new policy, and a lot more commentary around that. The other is actually a really well attended session that we had in here, wasn't it, with IWALC, very much reflecting the content of this report. So yes, there has been a lot of work to sort of actively go out to communities and try and help them navigate through what can actually probably be quite a complex and confusing sort of landscape of different types of documents with different weight and different influence and all sorts of things like that. So there is a lot of work to be done, being done and to be done to help with that.
Brilliant, thank you. If there's nothing else on that.
I've just got a very quick
Oh
question.
yes, sorry, Councillor Ward.
Chris and Ollie, are you waiting for, oh no, I'll rephrase that. Does the initiative have to come from the local town and parish council?
Not necessarily, Councillor. I think it ideally would be, because obviously as the local democratic representative body, I think it would be helpful if the town council were very much active and involved in the process, but not necessarily. There aren't any examples that don't involve a town council, let me put it that way, but who knows, that might happen at some point.
Microphone now, Councillor Ward, sorry.
We are not, as an Isle of Wight council, going to go along and say, you need a place plan. No, okay.
Brilliant. Okay, moving swiftly on to the development of a new records office. And I believe that's Chris again.
Yeah, that's me again. Thank you, Chair. And obviously the committee's had the vision document, and my apologies for there not being a covering paper on it, but the reason the vision document for a new cultural centre in the harbour is the paper that was circulated. It's the best document we have that answers the question which was posed by the committee, which is what the latest position on the potential funding for the records office issue might be. So for the purposes of those on the call, and obviously, you know, I'm sure this doesn't act as a reminder for the members of the committee. There's been a long-held ambition by the council to regularise its records provision and try and improve its accessibility, and that has been overseen by an organisation called the National Archives, who most of you will be aware of. They take an active interest in the public's availability and accessibility to artefacts, and clearly I think it's fair to say that they'd like to see an improvement on that on the island. So there's been a long-standing engagement with them, and various iterations about opportunities to repurpose buildings and arrange for the presentation of temporary exhibitions, a whole range of different ideas historically that have come forward. Unfortunately, most of them have been hamstrung by the issue of funding. So the committee is absolutely spot on in terms of, okay, this is a great idea. Hopefully you agree it's a great idea in terms of the vision document, but actually where's the funding going to come from? So we saw the opportunity in the regen context, recognising that the master plan for Newport Harbour highlights the need for a landmark building of cultural significance, originally in phase 3 of the implementation of the master plan. And we saw that opportunity, the administration did, to actually accelerate the investigation of that cultural centre. One of the reasons for doing that is the issue of the Records Office and the need to actually satisfy National Archives that we have a plan and what we're going to deliver so that they can be satisfied with that process. So they've been an important stakeholder in the vision document development. They provided commentary on our proposals for the concept of a new cultural centre. The document itself sets out the space requirements that the records element requires. But what it usefully does is it links the records provision to a wider, more flexible exhibition offer for cultural services across the island in the new building. So clearly, we've set our ambition high here in terms of the quality and the scope of the project. It will be a very significant addition to the role of Newport in the island's cultural life. But crucially, for the purposes of the item on the agenda, it will provide that cultural, that record centre offer that the National Archives are seeking us to provide. The next step in that process of a project of such size and scale, having got the vision document, we were very pleased to see that despite the different stakeholders and the different interests in the building, that a footprint on the site that we were thinking of, which is the current site of the Riverside Centre, was deliverable. And the next step to move on from that would be a detailed feasibility study into the deliverability of that project and getting it to what they call RIBA, Royal Institute British Architects Stage 3, so that you're able then to bid for public funding and private sector funding to implement the project. That potential commission of a feasibility study would also go into more depth around a funding strategy. And there's no question that in the current public sector, current funding environment, that an innovative approach to funding this project is going to be required. I think it's fair to say, this is anecdotal in my part, so apologies if I offend anyone on the island, but it's fair to say there are a fair few people on the Isle of Wight with a few bob, and going out to the wider community around a legacy investment, we think is a realistic proposition. So I'm expecting to see that in the funding strategy, which will in turn be part of that feasibility study. In the very short term, we have a challenge this year, and I'm sure the committee will not be surprised to hear this, and we'll be considering, obviously, in other forums, the budget for next year. So crucially, these types of projects will need to be prioritised in the context of the budget for next year. So obviously, at the moment, we are reviewing the output of the vision document with regard to then how we progress the feasibility study, because that's a significant commitment, which clearly is a budgetary issue. Yeah, obviously, Councillor Jones-Evans would want to add.
A couple of things, and thank you for Chris giving that background. I think it's worthwhile recalling when we were doing the consultation for the Newport Harbour Master Planning back in 2017-18, out of that consultation, public consultation, stakeholder consultation, there was seen a need for a cultural centre on this site. So what I've sort of taken the view with colleagues was to bring this element forward because of the need for the National Archives, but also to sort of pump prime in a way, put a really big landmark building in this location for the rest of the harbour development. And I think that's been borne out by some early work that we've done already. There's actually, this is the right strategy, rather than delivering smaller elements, doing a big sort of showpiece, if you like, that's necessary for our cultural life on the island. And if you look at page 18, you can actually sort of see the kind of scale we're looking at. So it'll actually be quite a high building, which can be accommodated in this industrial area. Obviously previously industrial, some of it still is working harbour, of course. So you have commanding views right across the island. And I think it's also worthwhile remembering regarding the Riverside Centre, is that the Riverside Centre, it was the function of the building that was most important rather than actually the location of the building. So by looking at other cultural elements that can go in here, so the records office, a new library for Newport, the replacement of Lord Louis, and obviously gallery space, we can maybe look at where else that function can be best suited and perhaps deliver it in a better way. So the functionality of the Riverside Centre will not be lost. I think that was really important for people to remember that at all times. That came out, say, very early on indeed. And I think, I know Chris did touch on it, that this has been a long-standing issue for many administrations of this council ever since I've been a councillor since 2009. The fact if we don't get our records in a really sound environment that are accessible to public as well, then there is a threat of them being taken off the island, and that will be at a cost to us as well. I think there's talk of a salt mine, I think in Cheshire or somewhere. I think we always spoke about that. So it is actually really important that we get this this project moving. Hopefully people will get behind it, but as Mr. Ashton's just said, we can't in this current climate, we cannot underestimate the challenges ahead of us. But I think it's the right thing to do, and I think we should just keep moving forward with it. I don't see why the Isle of Wight can't be ambitious and can't have really good facilities to celebrate all of our culture and have state-of-the-art facilities, because we have so much to show as well, so much to offer. I mean, those of you down Cluthy Bottom, you've seen what we've got in storage. It's not that people just don't see. And we have better show our museum that we have here currently in the Guildhall as well. So much we've got on the island, so much depth and breadth, and I think it deserves to have a really magnificent building to show it all off, and people can come and enjoy it.
Brilliant, thank you both. I saw Councillor Quirk first, then I'll move on to Councillor Bester.
Councillor Jones will probably be surprised that I agree with nearly everything she said. The original scoping looked at the development of an art centre there, and totally agree with that. Earlier in the year, I was in a Dutch Netherlands town called Zaandam, outside of Amsterdam, and they have a riverside location, and it's largely low rise, but they've incorporated into it some high rise elements, but they stand out as sort of like houses piled on top of each other. I mean, it's really well done. This site, seems to me that it's a site you could put a high-rise building on. And why on earth aren't we considering putting a tower block that we're showing here in our examples of what we could do on top of it? And if you've got effectively absorbing the Riverside Centre into it, it will be a prime place to put assisted housing flats that's the people are sort of right in the centre of town, and it's something that you could probably get money from Homes England for. So I applaud what you're doing, but I don't think you're doing enough.
Councillor Beston.
I mean, again, I do agree with what Councillor Jones Evans is saying. We must preserve our artefacts. We must preserve our island history on the island, without a doubt. I had a question regarding finance, but Chris has covered that off, so thank you for that. And just again, an observation. I'd read the paper right through. I was still concerned that we had a title of New Records Office. Now I understand that's incorporated within the Cultural Centre. So yeah, great, get it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Anything else? I think you've covered everything then, both. Well done. Okay, we are starting to get close to 7. So we'll move on to planning now. Who wants to start us off? And then I'm sure Councillor Quirk has some questions ready for us. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. The first paper that we have is relating to the peer review and the update that we've been sort of like pursuing since May. I think it was quite important that we fed back to this committee to advise what the action points were and the actions that we've taken to date. We have been working quite hard, and alongside Ollie and John Medland, a lot of meetings have taken place. We've been talking to stakeholders, and I think what is important is that we do everything that we can to listen to what people have told us and to act upon some of the things that people were telling us that were of concern. We've got our list of priorities, but there's been quite a lot of work that's been taking place, and I think members of the planning committee will be very aware of some of the training that has been improved in the last few months to make sure that people go into the planning committee with their eyes open. And I think one of the areas that was of concern to me, particularly from new councillors, were the fact that the training was not really fit for purpose when the new administration came into being. So I think the training has been robustly sort of like pursued, and I can only thank Councillor Medland for doing that as chairman of the planning committee. But again, the paper is as it is. I could go on and on and on, but I'm sure there will be questions, and myself and I'm sure Ollie can answer any inquiries that there are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. I'll move to Councillor Quirk.
I will endorse what's been said about the level of training has been upped quite dramatically. I think one of the problems in the initial training was that it was online and you could turn your screen off and actually not take any notice of what was going on. And I think several of it became quite apparent in early meetings that some members had done that or hadn't taken it in because they clearly didn't understand the basic rules of the planning committee. But onto this, that's sort of the background. But on page 93, it says that published notes of the development forum, assumed to be the Schlar panel meeting, recognised there was commercially sensitive discussions that were confidential. Now, when I was chair of planning, there was a forum that everyone sort of talked about things, and there was a Schlar panel which was made up of people who were on the forum, but wasn't the forum. Can someone clarify what's happening now?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Quirk, happy to clarify as best I can, which is that there is no change to the process as we currently have it in terms of the Schlar panel, how that's formed and how that works and how that interacts ultimately with James and the planning policy team, who are obviously using that information for allocations. The reference in the papers that you referenced, where it's assumed to be the Schlar panel, that's my addition, because I think there was some ambiguity from the peer review group in its reporting of what they were actually reporting about. So fundamentally, as it stands at the moment, the process remains the same, although the point that has been made through the peer review group around looking at how we can increase the understanding and potentially show greater transparency in the process is something that we're obviously taking on board through this work.
In that case, it should be exceptional times where there is a commercial conflict of interest between the group, rather than it not having decent minutes, because basically the Schlar panel should be assessing the suitability of sites, not putting forward their own sites and getting a nod on the side. That's what has the potential to get really bad reputational damage.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely agree, and that's why we obviously went to great pains when setting up that whole process to look at both government guidance on how you should go about your business doing that, look at other examples of best practice, and of course publish all the material and the terms of reference, etc., how it all works, which is all available online as well at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller as well.
Thank you. Chris, I think one of the things that was made apparent in the motion that was put to us at full council was the need to make sure that the SLA process was made a lot more transparent. And I know that there has been work going on behind the scenes to feed back on those 10 recommendations that came through full council. So one of the things I've sort of like been talking to officers about is having a briefing in the next few weeks or so about where we are with those 10 recommendations, but also what is also going on within the wider picture within planning, because as members are probably aware, there was a government, a ministerial statement before Christmas and a prospectus that has been circulated to planning authorities that we are still in the throes of digesting at the moment. And what I would like to really do is to combine a briefing session on the 10 recommendations, where we are with that, and also where we go forward, because again, there's some very interesting things in what is coming from Michael Gove. From my point of view, I feel very positive about it. I welcome the work that Bob Seeley has done. And I see this as a real opportunity to be able to work with the government. And I think that a lot of the things that's coming from government is actually repeating what we did within our consultation, within our Regulation 18 consultation back in 2018, 2019. So there seems to be quite a lot of parallels there. But again, government, the position with government at the moment, it is only a consultation from the government. We're probably a couple of steps ahead of the government in where we're going, but SLA is important. I think we need to improve the transparency, and I've received lots of criticism about how that has happened in the past, and we need to improve that. Thank you.
Councillor Quick.
From my perspective, I don't think either the development forum or the SLA is the area for confidential discussions. That should be in pre-app. And I find it hard to sort of visualise where there is a need for confidentiality. There should be openness and transparency there. Second point, there was the planning service should look to work collaboratively with partners to seek better outcomes. Now, the obvious partners are the developers, and I think you've got to be very careful on this one, that you're not selling your soul to the devil.
Thank you, Chair. And just to highlight that the actions and the points that you're raising here, Councillor Quirk, are ones that we have simply effectively lifted from the peer review group's report. So there will be a level of effectively scrutiny and work that I'm sure we'll all do. And whilst there may be a recommendation, it might be that following further work, that recommendation isn't taken up, or is taken up in a particular way, having worked it through locally. So there are, I've got to be honest with you, there are some recommendations where I'm not entirely clear myself 100% what the peer review group were really getting at. My understanding in relation to that particular point that you've raised, Councillor Quirk, is that I think the panel were thinking more along the lines of bodies like Historic England and the Environment Agency and bodies like that. So we'll be looking at what opportunity there is, or indeed what opportunity there isn't. Those organisations may not want to become involved in the way that the peer review group have suggested they may, but it will just be about having those conversations and understanding it.
I'll just bring Councillor Fuller in quickly.
I was going to add to what Ollie was saying. I think when we're talking to stakeholders, it isn't just the developer lobby that we would be looking to talk to. It would be town and parish councils, it would be residents, it would be individual householders as well. It's about engaging with all stakeholders, and that is one of the things that we are trying to do. I think we need to stick our head above the parapet. When we did our had our session with the peer review, there were a lot of individual stakeholders at that event, and I think it's about working with people and being transparent and open with them. If we can't do what people expect us to, I think people deserve to have an explanation. And I think it is the same whether you are a neighbour objecting to an application or whether you're a developer. The same applies to all parties. And I think we have to try to make sure that we are balanced fairly on how we deal with our stakeholders.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Any Councillor Quirk? Yeah.
Coming back to that one, it says here the planning service could reach out to partners to increase resources. Now, it's hard enough getting the resources from the Environment Agency and from Historic England and people like that to actually do what they actually have a statutory duty to do. So it's pie in the sky thinking that they're going to give you extra resources. The only people who are going to give you extra resources are people who've got a vested interest in it. So I think you have to, I'll state it again, I think you've got to be really careful that you're not dining with the devil here.
And I guess on Councillor Quirk's point was going to be my question was, Mr. Bolton, you talked about some of these points in the plan are essentially lift and shifted from the peer review document itself. How do we, as a scrutiny committee, how can we help form this going forward?
Thank you, Chair. So I think it's about keeping the lines of communication open and getting that helpful feedback. As hopefully councillors will have seen from the attached document to this paper, there is a dedicated steering group that has been set up already that includes both internal and external people representing different organisations, different sectors, and of course elected members sitting on that group. So I think for me that's going to be the main driver and overseer. But I think, and it's something that certainly Councillor Fuller has been very clear that he wants to see is the work as it progresses and works through is reported both to this group, scrutiny, formal corporate scrutiny as well. And indeed, I think that's why there's that graphic in the document trying to explain how the relationship of some of these groups and opportunity for input works, because obviously what we want to do is make sure is that absolutely there is the right level of accountability and actually input in terms of ideas and experiences in without a duplication of effort, time, resources, etc. When actually, if we focus sensibly, we'll be able to do more.
And that leads on to my next question, which was going to be how frequently do we want to bring this back to this committee on that point? Then is it going to be more ad hoc when we know things coming up for consideration, or do we need to plan it in a bit more?
I think, if I may, happy to, thank you. I think that's a really good question that we need to give a bit more thought to. The steering group that's been established is on a 6-weekly meeting cycle, and indeed the next meeting is Monday next week. I think with the attached route map document getting finalised, which obviously has those actions and starts to put some of those timeframes to it, I think there may be, I don't know what the committee thinks, but maybe something like a quarterly or every 6 months review check against progress against those actions for that relevant quarter, section, 6 months, probably to give a sufficient time to enable some of those actions to be undertaken. But obviously I'd be very happy, and Paul would confirm what the situation would be to be in terms of that is what the committee requests.
Brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Yes, I've spoken to the chairman, and I think the chairman of the planning committee, who sat next to you, has probably agreed that it would be worthwhile also giving an update to members of the planning committee as well, because I think members of the planning committee, they live and breathe planning throughout the year, and knowing what members of the planning committee are like, they are probably the councillors that have the most interest. But, you know, one of the things that we also were talking is making sure that we make our planning service, and planning, it should be an integral part of a councillor's life. A lot of councillors don't live and breathe planning like myself, Chris and John does. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that planning in the future is open a lot more to more people, and more people can get involved. You have a lot of councillors who have been on the planning committee for a long time, and they never darken the doors of Sea Close. And that's a real shame, because I think there is a myth out there that planning officers aren't there to support members, when really they are. They can give a lot of support to members. They can give a lot of support to town and parish councillors. And, you know, I certainly have a lot of experience and a lot of feedback coming back from organisations like IWAC that is starting to work quite well. I'd like to thank Ollie, because again, Ollie was at the last IWAC meeting in December, was it? And again, you gave a presentation there about which is the next item on the agenda, which is planning enforcement. So again, that dialogue is there. We've got a good relationship with our town and parish councils, and I think we can still build to make sure that that improves in the future. So thank you to Ollie and the team, because they've been incredibly receptive and very, very patient with me. So I'd like to put on record my thanks to Ollie and the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. And with that, we'll move nicely on to planning enforcement strategy. Is that you, Ollie? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so very much, I suppose, in the same spirit as the last item. This is to provide an update on progress. So hopefully you would have seen that in the report. I think it's reflective of where we are in the process that this item doesn't have an up-to-date sort of document attached. The information that was provided was obviously the current planning enforcement strategy from 2015, but taking into account the feedback from the LGA peer review and a lot of the feedback and comments that we've had over a period of time, both formally and informally, from councillors such as yourselves, parish, town and community councils, and via IWALC, we knew that there were a number of issues in terms of meeting the expectation of what our enforcement service could and indeed should be delivering on. We've spoken at various points this evening across agenda items around some of those challenges around funding, capacity and meeting aspiration, and planning enforcement, I think, is at this moment in time is no different to any of those things. So I'm actually personally, professionally, really quite pleased that we're looking at planning enforcement in the way that we're doing, and trying to come up with something different. It's one of those situations where we hear a lot of the time it's not working. Well, let's not try and do the same thing slightly differently or tinker around the edges. Let's really have a look at what some of those structural issues or barriers might be and see how we can address them. So the paper updates the committee on sketching out what we're looking at, and sort of gives some of those next steps as to what we need to do to get that in train. So those fundamental principles will be to prepare a new planning enforcement strategy. And a key point just for me is that's a strategy, not a policy. For me, a policy is a single point of action. A strategy looks at it in the round and talks to other strategies and issues, approaches across the whole council, and connects in a way that I don't think we've done before, takes us out of our silo working and tries to bring together across the board to meet those corporate plan objectives and those things that actually really matter to the community. Now, as much as we would like to, we can't do that within the sort of current resource capacity envelope that we have. We have recently, beginning of November last year, brought in a new member of staff into planning enforcement on a 3-year temporary contract. They've come in and we've been really pleased. They've hit the ground running and have made a big indent into our backlog. By backlog, I mean alleged enforcement breaches that we are investigating that hadn't been allocated to an enforcement officer because they simply didn't have the capacity to do that. That was standing at well over 100 at the beginning of November. As of today, I think it's down to 44 unallocated. So we've really been able to get stuck in. So that does show to me what can be done when we're able to bring the resource to it. The intended approach is that the new strategy will be clear, that we will, as indeed we do under the current 2015 policy, we will provide effectively that base level of service when it comes to planning enforcement, looking at those priority 1 and 2 cases that are of island-wide significant and where repairable damage to listed buildings, protected buildings, landscapes and trees are happening. The intention is that we will continue to do that, and that will be very much our core work as the Isle of Wight Council. It will then there will then be the opportunity for town, parish and community councils, if they wish to be proactive in their area and actually target specifics, so perhaps the condition of certain properties or certain areas, they can help us by funding capacity to enable us to do that, and then we will proactively go out and deliver, hopefully, on those priorities that the community have identified. So, and that's been a real big thing for me. I've really felt that planning enforcement has for a little while now, because of just the sheer volume of work it's had to go through, has been going a bit through the motions, dare I say, and we're just doing enforcement. But what we really need to get to, what I really believe is we need to get to a place where our enforcement team is making the biggest difference it can to the greatest number of people. And that's what the strategy is looking to enable us to do. Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ollie. Councillor Quirk.
The planning enforcement policy looks very good to me and totally supports it. The planning enforcement strategy, I'm a little more concerned about. It is a duty of the council, and to say we're only going to do the big things tells builders they can get away with the rest, and I think that's a bad situation. If you want to go to town and parish councils and they buy in some extra service, I think you've got to have an offer. It's okay if you've got a town council where there's members of cabinet who can sort of do it through the back door and it can all come in, but you need to go to everyone and give them the same offer as to what they can get and what it's going to cost them. And somehow that offer has to have the assurance, because the Bay chairman, mayors met, and their concern about to going ahead with something for the Bay was, how do we know we're going to get what we're paying for? And so you've got to have an offer that actually makes it very clear that if you pay 100% for somebody, you get 100% of somebody, and you don't just take that person and do the level 1 and 2s in the Bay with that person and then release capacity elsewhere. So you've got to have some sort of offer that is credible, and you know what it's cost and you know what you get.
Yeah.
I totally, absolutely agree with you, Councillor Quirk. I think one of the things that we found was, initially we were approached by Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council, and they said that they would be prepared to support a planning enforcement enforcement officer to come in. Now, they decided to support a planning enforcement officer for 2 days, which was brilliant because we could fund that from the Isle of Wight Council to help with the backlog as well for the 3 days as well. I think one of the things that Ollie has been brilliant at is going into town and parish councils and finding out exactly what the priorities of your town and parish councils are, because you know, town and parish council in Ryde might have different priorities from the community council in Newport. And I think what we want to do is we want to make sure that one size doesn't fit all, and that it is service driven and we are fulfilling the needs. Because at the end of the day, if we're not giving the town and parish councils the value for money that they require, we're going to lose their support. So it's important that we work with them. So yeah, there is a real opportunity. I'm hoping that what happens in Newport can be an exemplar for other parts of the island. But at the moment, we're at very, very early stages. Don't know whether Ollie wants to add on that. One of the other things I wanted to add, though, was we've also appointed new tree officers as well within the planning department. And again, we haven't mentioned tree officers, but we did only have one tree officer working previously, and he was working his socks off. It's brilliant that we've been able to recruit actually give Jerry a team of other officers that can work with them. And again, I think one of the officers that we had working with him was also partially funded by town and parish councils. It's about how we use our town and parish councils for the betterment of what we're trying to achieve. You know, we're not going to be in a situation indefinitely where we can provide all the services that our residents require from us. So it's so important that we work very, very closely with our town and parish councils. And if we don't, then we've only got ourselves to blame.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, just to follow on from your point, Councillor Quirk, absolutely agree. If it's a discretionary paid for service, whoever is paying for it needs to be quite clear that they are receiving the service that they are paying for. If they don't, why would they pay for it? Absolutely. So there will be, the intention is that it will be effectively a formalised arrangement based on a service level agreement of certain performance indicators with quarterly reviews, etc. So it'll be very much parish, town, community council driven. If you are buying in this extra capacity and these are the things you want to do, then that's what that will be judged against, and that's what that capacity would be used for. Absolutely, very clear to make that point. It's just to clarify, this certainly isn't saying that outside of, say, priority 1 cases will stop or not do planning enforcement. If I had legal advice in the room, he would, I'm sure, be telling me that the LPA would never wish to fetter their discretion, as they would say. So we absolutely wouldn't want to do that. I think for me, the key point here is we are only able, with what we've got, we are only able to do as much as we can at the pace that we do it. That is effectively what our offer is. If that offer isn't what people want in their area, and they might fund capacity to say, well, actually, we don't want you to do anything new in terms of enforcement in our area. We just want you to do the enforcement in our area more quickly. And we can do that by having a dedicated person only dealing with the Bay or Newport or West Wight or wherever. So that's the way sort of anticipate it working.
Brilliant. And I'll wrap us up on that one just with the last question. Is this due for Cabinet in February? Am I correct? Yeah. Can we see this before it gets there?
There is some timing implications for this, Chair, and the reason that I say that, and I had to just make a note of them before the meeting, so that we're due to bring the strategy to Cabinet on the 9th of February. Obviously, in terms of reporting cycles, the papers will be published or due to be published on the 1st of Feb. I and the enforcement team will be working very hard because in between now and then, not least because when we went and spoke to IWALC about this idea and about the direction of travel, IWALC, the feedback from the IWALC meeting was that the parish and town councils were very keen to, as you are, have a look at what is being proposed and give some feedback on it. So we're not looking at a full public consultation on an emerging enforcement strategy, but we're looking at engaging with a targeted audience, primarily of town and parish councils, to show them what the intended direction of travel and to receive any feedback that they may give. If timings can work, I see no issue from an operational point of view, but given that the 9th of Feb is a fraction over a month away, and we need to give a meaningful amount of time for parish and town councils to be able to receive, consider and respond, I fear timing might be too tight.
Okay. I guess we can discuss that outside of the meeting and see if we can fit, even if it's an informal briefing. Yeah, but point taken. Anything else?
Just the consultation with town and parish councils, not just with IWALC.
I'm getting nods. Brilliant. Right, we'll move on to parking. Who's taking us through the annual parking report? And should we try and keep it brief?
Well, Chair, thank you. Again, you've caught me on the hop because the report's here for you. I've got not much to add to that. Yeah, look, there's nothing to add to that. Report's there in front of you. It is what it is. I'd like to take this first opportunity, at least, to thank the staff. There's a lot of work gone into this, a lot of data collated, a lot of information. It takes time and effort and energy from our team, and I do appreciate, and I hope everyone else appreciates that work that they've put in. But there it is. It's a mixed bag, parking. It's a difficult problem to deal with. It is what it is. It provides revenue for this council, which relieves some of the financial pressures we have, but it is also part of a broader policy of travel, transport and parking across the island generally. So there we are. Whether we've got it right or not, we don't know. That will probably be a moving feast forever and ever. We have yet to begin the new parking strategy, which we committed to for 2024. So we are still a way off, but I see some of this year being some preliminary work of setting up a group to approach that for 2024. There it is, Chair. I'm happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Any questions on the parking report? Councillor Quirk.
Don't mean to make it a habit. Two things. Principles of parking provision on page 6 of the report, page 142 of the whole document pack. Page 6 of the report, 142, principles of parking provision, and quite clearly the one of the overriding principles of parking provision is revenue generation, which you did mention, but it's not in the report. But that is a key element. And in terms of that revenue generation, certainly in terms of the bay, and I suspect in other areas where you have an estimated parking, what happens in charging in the winter is that people don't park on the esplanade, and that has a negative effect on the businesses because you go to the garden centre where you can have a cup of tea for park for free to have your cup of tea out, rather than going down onto the seafront and going into one of the cafes. And I suspect the loss of rates because of businesses folding is actually a greater loss than the loss of the revenue if you didn't charge the park in the winter months, because you just go down along the seafront in any area of the bay, and it's just completely empty. And I think we're we're doing something to theoretically generate money that isn't generating money, but is actually having a deleterious effect on the businesses that actually operate. And tourism is still our biggest industry. And we've heard about the success of tourism, but tourists want to have businesses there when they come. They want to be able to go and get a cup of tea.
Councillor Ward.
Chris, I think it's geography. I have the totally different experience in Sandown. If we don't charge on the seafront during the winter, actually the people who normally use a car park go and park on the seafront. So one way or another, you're going to lose. It's a difficult one. Maybe it's a minimal charge somewhere along the line. I don't know.
Ian, thank you for your experience comments. That's so pertinent that your experience has delivered just one explanation of the complexities of developing a parking structure. Thank you for that, Ian.
Just is information. You do have to pay on Sandown Seafront now.
No, but when you did,
yeah. And I guess the other comment I would make is that we need to be careful that we don't treat the island identically. That there may be different views on that, but different areas of the island have different problems to deal with on transport and vehicle and parking. I don't want to turn this into any kind of dispute, Chris, but parking is not for revenue generation. Let's be very clear about that. It is to do with safety and traffic movement, and there is an outcome of revenue generation. But and you are well aware, and it's in the report, that the income from all of that generated revenue is spent in a certain way on highways and transport and so on and so forth. On road and off road slightly differently, but we have to. If you look at the chart of income, it's a net £3.5 million revenue income for this authority that prevents that money being cut in services elsewhere in this council. So it is an important service that we deliver, but getting it right, who knows?
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. We'll move on to parking charges and permits. Is there anything else to add to that? Is that covered?
Yeah, that obviously that's going to be part of our parking strategy review. We are looking independently at a number of other permits. Can't give any details. We've only just started that. One might be a tradesman's permit, for example. That's just as an example. That's become, big cities have this problem, as you know, where tradesmen are trying to park their vans to deliver services, maybe repair a boiler for an older vulnerable person, and finding it extremely difficult to park in certain circumstances in some of our big towns. So we're looking at that particular permit, and some others anyway.
Fantastic. And then when we swiftly on to 1 hour free parking in Newport.
That's been a great success. Thanks to, just so that you're very clear about this, this is subsidised by Newport Community Council, who have contributed to the Isle of Wight Council the losses we would have endured as on average as a result of providing 1 hour free parking. It's been quite successful, I have to say, although we have been in a period coming out of COVID and reduced car parks. But just very quickly, we've had about 62,500 extra transactions in Newport since the 1 hour free parking in those car parks. It's equates to about £46,000 of extra income, which is approximately about 350 transactions per day. So you could say by introducing 1 hour's free parking thank you, Newport Community Council. We've encouraged 350 extra vehicle transactions today, about £1.36 additional income per transaction. I don't know what you do with those numbers. I've just got them and reading them out. Sound good, don't they?
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Did Chris want to come in as well?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce Councillor Jordan's reference to the parking team and their support for this pilot. Again, their innovation and their ability to be flexible in implementing that is something we can acknowledge and celebrate. But I just wanted to link it back briefly, if I might, to the earlier item about place planning, because this issue was recognised pre-pandemic as a key issue for making Newport a destination. And I think we celebrate the impact that Councillor Jordan's been setting out in terms of that function. So there has been a significant increase in people saying they visited more often to Newport since the pilot's been in place over a 4-year period pre-pandemic. So I think in the context of what the parking strategy as it currently says about local flexibility and what Councillor Jordan's referred to about different places having different challenges, we're showing here from practical pilot experience what's possible, the art of the possible, if you like, in being slightly more flexible in the way we think about this issue.
Brilliant. Councillor Jones-Evans?
Yeah, no, just thank you. So, I think it's worthwhile saying this has actually directly come out of the place plan that I think it's 5 years ago when we were going through the consultation process, and parking has come up a big issue for Newport Business Association. They're one of the partners with the Shaping Newport. So you've got Community Council and the Isle of Wight Council. This has been a long time coming, but it really is. It's worthwhile doing the work. It really is worthwhile putting all those hours into building up trust, because let's face it, some people don't trust others, don't trust the councils to do the right thing, or people got their own ideas of how things should go. But by having honest, open dialogue for the sake of a place, it's really rewarding. So I think this, we should really be proud of the way this is been accepted by the public and how they've responded to it by actually coming in and making use of it. Going forward, it'd be really interesting to see if we can continue to fund it, given the cost of loss of income, as Councillor Jordan has pointed out, and obviously our current budgetary situation. So I really do hope we can continue with it, because it really is adding another really important element to Newport. Because I think if you recall, about 3 years ago, Councillor Price, myself and Councillor Brodie brought forward a motion to full council where we explained the difference between Ryde and Newport, and how Ryde had, I think it's something like 300, don't get the exact numbers, about 344 free car parking spaces more than Newport did. And this was felt as a bit unfair, really, because they're similar towns, very, obviously one's more commuter town, but you've got Union Street, very, very popular street where it's hour parking free. You've got High Street and other areas, it's limited, you'd have to pay or very limited waiting. So it was really felt that we wanted to level things up. But so the work that was fed back through into Shaping Newport, and we got the data, and we managed to obviously convince the Isle of Wight Council last year to go ahead with the pilot. So we've still got another, I think, running till May. Yeah, running till May. So we're really interested to see how that stacks up the rest as more and more people know about it, and also aligning it with the footfall data we get, because in Newport and Ryde we have footfall counting now as part of the HAS data, so we know what happens on certain big events, and markets and so on. Though the Jubilee did actually break the system, and we had so many people in Newport, we haven't actually got the right figures for that yet. So it'd be good to lay all this up and see really what this actually means. But good survey we had recently with businesses and people in Newport that have really taken it on to heart, and it's made a difference. Particularly there's the music CIC down the road and down the High Street next to the old post office. It's enabled them to give more lessons because people can park for an hour, and they can then afford their children to have music lessons. So it really has had a good impact. So anyway, as you know, I could talk about Newport for ages. I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Councillor Jones Evans. So I don't have to do it. Brilliant. Right. Committee's work plan. Anything to add to the work plan? Everybody just wants to get home now. Yeah. Brilliant. We'll move on to any questions. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have a series of regeneration questions. I've already put them to Councillor Julie Jones Evans, so I don't expect an answer. Okay, but what I would like is the questions to be recorded in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Pier Street toilets in Sandown. We're drifting. Years. You know, what's the timeline? When is it going to be ready? That's the question. What I would like to each of these questions is, what's the aim and what's the timescale for getting that out? We don't seem to have timescales for anything. They just drift. Okay. Sandown Town Hall. It was going to be developed into accommodation and public use as well. Someone claimed it as a community asset. It's now drifting again. That timeline ran out. Where are we? Okay, Dinosaur Isle. Potentially a multi-million-pound investment in Sandown. Stop dead. What's happening? Okay. I know Julie's shaking her head, but if she knows, nobody else does. Okay, that's why I'm asking the question. And the High Street Regeneration Task Force. What's happened? You know, we had a meeting. Still waiting. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. And okay, yeah.
Yeah, we have responses for all those, and it's not as bleak as you look. But obviously, given the time, more than happy to give you a.
I mean, I get any number of complaints about the neighbours in the town hall. It looks derelict. It's become a commercial car park. There's scaffolding everywhere. There's vandalism goes on. There's antisocial behaviour. And, you know, and I've got residents saying, well, what's happening? Oh, I can't tell them. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fair question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're recorded and you'll get a response. Excellent. And with that, I'll bring the meeting to a close.